We want to stop giving up your rights to parent input. And this is so critical because if we don't have your input at important times throughout the special education process, do you know what happens? Well, actually, we can reduce it to a mathematical formula. And the formula is LPI equals SNKS, which means less parent input equals the staff not knowing your child. And that's what we want to prevent. We want to make sure throughout your child's schooling, throughout the special education, the general education process, that staff that work with your child really understand that whole person that they are. We want them to see their strengths, their gifts, their talent, yes, their needs, but we need to see that whole picture. And you have such important information, so many nuggets that you found out about your child with what works, what doesn't work. And we want to make sure that you get your parent input. I think most parents are used to when they attend IEP meetings, it's like, aha, this is my chance to give my parent input. However, did you know that there are more times, not just one or two, not just three, but I've identified at least 4 different times throughout this process where parents, I think, don't understand that they have another chance, another opportunity to give input. So today we're going to be talking about one of those. And I remember working with a family in Colorado, and the mom called me up during the evening and said, you know, I was looking through my son's backpack, helping him clean it out after dinner, and I noticed this crumpled up paper in the bottom of the backpack by the goldfish crackers, all the crumbs. And I wondered what it was. I pulled it out, I opened it up and tried to smooth it down. And I wasn't sure what it was, but I noticed at the bottom it said, please sign here and date. And then in handwriting, it said, return to school the next day. Well, here this parent received a consent for evaluations just by cleaning out her son's backpack. The problem is parents need to understand what they're consenting for when they sign for evaluations. So let's look at that opportunity that parents have. Before you consent to any evaluations, I want to make sure that you understand the assessment plan. And that assessment plan needs to be developed by the evaluation team. And you might say, evaluation team? I didn't know that existed. Yes, and guess who's on the evaluation team? The parent and the student, a general education teacher, a special education teacher, someone who can interpret assessment results, and an administrator or designee. And this is where you want to check with your state regulations. Some states have a mandated group that's even larger than this. But usually these are the people that are required in your state to be on your child's evaluation team. Now, if truth be told, and I used to be a special ed teacher, so I know the inner workings of the schools, we really didn't have many assessment planning meetings. What would typically happen, and I think still occurs today, is a special education teacher or the case manager would send an email out to all your child's teachers. If they have any related service providers like a speech language pathologist or an OT or a PT, they would all receive an email saying, you know, so-and-so's 3-year evaluation is coming up. We need to figure out which evaluations we're going to be using this time. Or maybe it's the initial evaluation and your child is just being assessed to see if they qualify for special ed services. But this email would go out and everybody kind of amongst themselves would decide what they're going to be doing. They would send an email back to the special ed teacher. She would fill out that consent for evaluation. And sometimes that winds up crumpled at the bottom of your child's backpack. So most often what we would see, like I said, are these emails that go out to the staff. Sometimes, which is wonderful, the special ed teacher will also email you as the parent and ask for your input. So if that happens, thank your special ed teacher for including you. However, I think we want to even take that one step further. So let's look at what that would look like when we're talking about developing assessment plans. And I need to go over here. One of the questions I have for you, and you can put it down in the comments, is, are you asked for input for assessment planning? Do you get that crumpled paper home in your child's backpack? Or do you get an email from the special ed teacher? Or for some parents, it's just like complete silence. They don't hear anything, which is not what we want happening, right? Well, first, let's look at what is the purpose of assessment planning, because you might be like, Charmaine, I've never heard of this assessment planning. Well, it does exist. And one of the main purposes is for the evaluation team, and remember, you're a member of that team, is to look at the information that they already have. Can they tell from the documents and the test assessments and things like that what your child's strengths are, what their needs are? Does the team have enough information to say, yes, we can feel confident that these are current performance levels of the student? Do they ask for parent and student input? Part of what they can be gathering if there's been any private assessments done. Or as a parent, you can be offering some family and health history that might be pertinent. Previous assessments that have been done, work samples, all of this information can be gathered by each of the persons serving on that evaluation team, and they can look at what they already have. Now, the next step is to determine, do we have enough information? Do we need any additional assessments before we can say yes or no, this child is eligible for special education services? Now, there's no requirement that the team meets in person to do this. Like I said, it usually happens kind of behind the scenes. But to me, the best practice in assessment planning is when the evaluation team meets in person or virtually now, right? And you are a part of that discussion, which will lend itself to you having this better understanding of what kinds of assessments are really necessary at this point for your child. And then if you agree, you can sign that consent form for evaluations. Now, there are some action steps that you can take before the assessment planning process happens. And the first thing that you need to do is request an evaluation team meeting to develop that assessment plan. Now, chances are there's hardly been any parents in your district that have ever requested an evaluation team meeting to come up with an assessment plan for your child, but that's okay. Like I said, there's no requirement that happens, but to me, that's best practice. So I would go ahead and request that. And hopefully the district will be positive and will set that meeting up. Before you go to the assessment planning meeting, you want to get your ducks in a row, your information together. So while you're waiting for that assessment planning meeting to happen, you can start jotting down your child's strengths, any kind of background information. Maybe you've just moved here, and so you want the school district to know that, and that your child's still getting used to this new, school and all the things that are happening. Maybe you have information about how your child is doing academically when you see them doing schoolwork at home, or you have some idea of where their social and communication skills are. And also you want to jot down what concerns you have. So this is going to be your time where you gather the information that you have. Now, the other thing that you can do is, like I said earlier, you can look at work samples, get your child's input, any previous evaluation, things like that you have, gather that up. And then when you go to the meeting, make sure you bring all those documents. So if you need to, they're just right there at your fingertips, and you can go and easily pull up the information for the team. Now, when you're at the assessment planning meeting, these are some things that you can do. One is to listen to the staff, see what information they share about your child, see what they've already recognized or noticed, and the recommendations they have for any new evaluations that might be necessary. This is your time to shine. So you're going to be sharing your information at the assessment planning meeting and asking any questions you have about the proposed evaluations. And if you agree with the assessment plan, you can give consent. You can sign that consent paper. Or if you disagree with the plan, you can say, this is still not acceptable. We need to continue the conversation and look at some other options. Did you know that you can give consent for some assessments and refuse to give consent for others? For instance, for us, our son Dylan, who happens to have Down syndrome, we never gave consent for any kinds of cognitive testing when he was in school, because we never felt like it would really be that helpful or give us any kind of valid results. So you can decide which assessments would be appropriate for your child, give consent for those, and any assessments that you don't think would be appropriate, you can refuse to give consent for those. So now it is after that assessment planning meeting, you've signed consent for evaluation, and there are a few action steps that you can take. The first is to make sure that you submit your parent report and request that it be copied and pasted and just embedded right in the evaluation report. Just like the school psychologist has a report, and that gets fully included in the evaluation report, the speech and language therapist, the special ed teacher, guess what? You are a member of the evaluation team, so make sure that your parent report gets embedded in that evaluation report. You're also going to be emailing a request to have a copy of the draft evaluation report at least 3 to 5 days before the evaluation/eligibility meeting. Just like you want to have time to be able to read and kind of digest a IEP draft, you also want to have a draft evaluation report that you can be looking at. So let's go back here and look. So in this part 1 of our 3-part series, we have looked at how that assessment planning meeting is a place that you can have parent input. So to make sure that you are a part of that meeting, and we are going to look at a second situation where often parents don't realize the importance of parent input in this situation. We are going to have part 2, and the link for it will be down below in the comments. And we are going to look at another time when we want to make sure that you stop giving up your parent input rights. Now, just one more thing. I want to make sure that you know about our Distance Learning Advocacy Toolkit. I put this together, created it after getting a lot of questions from parents as far as how to make distance learning more inclusive, how to have paraeducators be more helpful and effective during remote learning. Parents were asking me for example accommodations. So we have put together 7 different digital advocacy tools for you. And you can go to the site iep.today/GetDLToolkit and grab your own copy of that. So we will be returning with part 2 of our series. So until then, have a wonderful day.